Welcome into the Morning Glory Show. I am your host, Jake Robertson, and we have got a show for you today. So I hope your shit shower shaved. I hope you got your mayo in your cup because it's time to tighten up. We got a great guest joining us today, ESPN NFL Nation reporter covering the Tennessee Titans, member of the Pro Football Writers Association, ESPN radio, host of the Talking with TD podcast, Turron Davenport. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thanks for having me, man. Bright and early. You know, the early bird, you know what it gets.
It gets the worm. It gets the worm. We try to do it up here and start the day off right. But I am joined by my co-host, as always, as well, B-Will. Follow him at BWillTFTV. How you doing today, B-Will?
I'm great, man. Can't complain. Like you said, it's a coffee morning today.
100%. And then always, we're joined by Jonathan Miller as well. Follow him at Esports Valen. How you doing today, Jonathan?
Doing well, man. We got the guest of the hour, man. We got TD on here. Turron, it's been a pleasure following your career, following your analysis, and that's one of the things that I enjoy the most about football is diving deep into the X's and O's, understanding the strategy behind what we see on the field. And so it's going to be fun to talk about that today with the Titans.
Yeah,
appreciate
we're
it.
gonna hop into it. We're going to talk some Will Levis. We're going to talk some draft, of course. We are officially 1 week away from the NFL draft. And I don't know about you guys, but I am absolutely exhausted. I'm ready for this to be over. I'm ready to hop back into the rest of the offseason post this because it has been work. But we're going to talk about it today. We're going to talk some Will Levis. So basically, we know regardless of how this car is built through this draft with this new regime and Rand Carthon, if you don't have the right driver, it ain't going nowhere. So we're talking Will Levis, obviously coming off his rookie year, replaced Ryan Tannehill halfway through the season through that injury, played in 9 games. Obviously, the week 17 was cut short with Houston, but finished with a 58% completion percentage, 224 yards per game, 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Great overall. Obviously, we got to find him an offensive line. We got him some more weapons this offseason. We're building around him. But, Turron, what do we have to see from Will Levis to know this is the guy for the future this season?
I think it's a mixture of two things. The pocket presence has to improve, and it did somewhat. But the other thing is just being more careful with the football. He tends to try to fit that thing in places where you probably shouldn't, or sometimes just make throws. You're just like, you can't. You look at the Dolphins game, right? The interception that he threw. You can't have those. But then you look at the Bucs game, there were games, throws that should have been picked off, but they weren't. So for me, the biggest thing is just to be more careful with the football. I believe that he could be a really good quarterback. And I think, it goes beyond just his play on the field. It feels to me like he has a really good, I don't want to say hold, but impact on the other players. And I'll never forget when Arden Key came up and he was like, he's a dog. And he talked about how he but encouraged Levis to get in front of the team and speak. And to be able to do that as a rookie that didn't start until week 8, I think that's pretty impressive.
Turron, I have a question for you about Will that was pretty interesting. Something that came up in a interview that he did. I want to say it was the QB School guys. I can't remember the exact podcast, but he did a interview recently, and he talked about how obviously not being the starter has a different dynamic. Like you can't lead the team in the same way that you can when you know you're the guy, which makes sense. So he kind of knew his place in that scenario. But what was interesting is he talked about how this new Brian Callahan offense, he didn't say anything very specific or direct, but he basically alluded to this offense is going to allow me to kind of play the way I would like to play. And so what's your analysis on what this new Brian Callahan offense can do for him? Is it more of a scheme fit for him and play to his strengths personally? And did last year's offense kind of hamstring him as a passer?
Well, this offense isn't driven by the running game. I think that's the biggest difference. So anytime you have a QB-driven offense like this, it's going to showcase the quarterback much more. And I think you also have to look at Brian Callahan being a former quarterback himself, obviously not in the pros, but still, at a higher level in college. I think that helps, and just the experience that he has working with other quarterbacks that Joe Burrow experience that he has, I think, is going to be even more valuable than his time with Peyton Manning, because it's a similar situation to where you have a young quarterback who's coming into a situation where you're asking him to be the man. You're demanding him to be the man early in his career. So I think that's going to help. I asked Brian Callahan about allowing Levis to evolve and mature into the leader that he's able to do. And Callahan had a great answer. He just said, I'm not going to make him do it any particular way. I'm just going to let him grow the way that he's going to be organic, So that's a good thing. As far as like in this offense, the thing that I like is just the way that Bill Callahan's going to help too, but Brian Callahan, I like the way that he's able to identify things that they do really well and stick to it, regardless of whether a team is trying to make it, stop, but then make adjustments off of that. And I think a good example of that is how he used T. Higgins a lot of times on the slot fade, right? You have that advantage there. You have a bigger, faster receiver, crazy hops. So you run that fade out of the slot. Teams started to, adjust to that. So then he started to do other routes where Higgins would sell the fade, chop it down, and break back to the quarterback. And now you're opening up other opportunities. So I like that kind of part of it. I think this is going to be a more advanced, detailed offense. And then not to mention the players that they've brought in to really help that out.
Most definitely. So it's funny you say that about the scheme, because this is something I thought of with Levis last year. I mean, we asked him, I'm not going to say we asked him to do a lot, but he had a lot of big-time throws that he made. His average depth of target was very high just because we ran a lot of Yankee and hard play action fakes. But one question I have is, with this offense, do you think that Callahan will be able to sort of get better control of Levis's temperament? Because he had a similar situation with Stafford, similar type of quarterback, gunslinger type quarterback. Do you think this will allow Levis to sort of tamper his temperament a little bit? Because that can be problematic as a quarterback in this league.
Yeah, I mean, at times he has that tendency to try to, get a 2-touchdown lead back with one throw, and he does have to taper that down. But I think that, again, goes back to what we talked about with Callahan's experience playing the position. That's something. And then I'm really curious, how Nick Foles comes into the mix. You know what I mean? I want to see how the quarterback coach too, because I felt Charles London was a really, really steady and influence for Levis last year. In fact,
Yes.
I feel that. I know that because I talked to Levis throughout the year. Like, I took an interest in him as soon as he got onto the practice field. Like, after practice, was talking to him all the time and everything. And we talked a lot about Charles London and how Charles London was bringing him along. So I want to see how this staff is able to take that baton and move it on. But you are right. Just with Callahan, having that experience, I think that's going to help Will Levis as far as his temperament is concerned. And you can sit there in the film room and say, like, we don't need it all in this throw. And that's something that he actually picked up, because you look at the Steelers game, I remember that Wednesday after the game, because you had Traylon Burks on that fourth down. Traylon Burks, was 3-by-1 and Burks was on this side, and he ran that go route because he had the alert, right? The safety was in the middle of the field. That's an alert to go there, but it was like 4th and 5. He had Kyle Phillips, Chig ran the clear out. Phillips came underneath like that, and he was open. You know what I mean? It's just like, you come off of that, you go there, now you got another series. And you'll be able to go back to that deep route at some point. But it ended up being a turnover on downs. And I remember asking him about that. And he acknowledged that, I do have to come off of that and maybe take my eyes someplace else where the defense is taking me. But as Tim Kelly said, you have single high, you have your guy one-on-one over there. You trust your guy to beat their guy. So it was an alert. And it would be crazy for Kelly to tell him not to do that after all the time they spent in the film room, telling him to do that. So I say all that to say, like, there's a balance that you got to try to find, and that's going to be interesting seeing how that works.
100%. I think it'll be a lot more easier with, it's coming off that, like you said, coming off that alert, because we've got we got a couple more playmakers underneath now that he can sort of rely on and trust and say, hey, they'll get that 5, they'll get that 6 now. So I think that's a big difference too, man.
Yeah, I think it's just, he's the mad bomber, man. Like, he loves to go downtown.
He does.
And that alert was there. But you're right, though. Having other playmakers, that trust, I think that's going to be huge and allow him to scan the field a little bit better.
No,
TD,
I
did
100%
you?
agree.
Sorry, Jake. I was just gonna say, like, just to kind of stay on the Will Levis side of things. Did you see, being completely unbiased? Obviously, I've been a big Titans fan for a long time, but taking my Oilers hat off and just looking at the team and looking at Will Levis objectively, to me, I saw enough last year to not only say, okay, let's ride and see what this guy can be. But to me, I think I can even go as far as to say that I think I saw enough in him to be confident that he can be the guy, right? Like all the tools and intangibles are there, but he's got all the other things that you want in a quarterback too. Like obviously he has some things that he needs to tighten up, his decision-making probably being the biggest one. He got away with probably having 6 or 7 picks that he should have had last year, even the limited time that he played. But to you, when you evaluate his 2023 season, it's obvious that we all probably kind of feel universally like, sure, this guy could be the guy. But what was your takeaway from that season, and what is your analysis for Will Levis personally going into this next year and kind of the building around him phase?
Yeah, I took away there was a lot of good and some bad, and just objectively looking at it, because I like Will just as a person. Will Levis is a cool dude. I told him, I said, like, I would take you to the cookout. Like you would get an invite to the cookout. You know what I mean? He's one of those cool type of dudes. So, but objectively, yeah, I think there's a lot that has to be improved. But I mean, there's a lot to look at and just be like, man, like we get the right situation, we can make it work. That's how I would look at it if I was the Titans coach. I think they have a good opportunity to take this guy and build so much around him. And that's why this year is so critical. I believe he can be the guy. I'm not convinced, but I believe that there's a lot of potential there. And I feel that's the way that they look at it too. And that they think that, they have something there. They're going to just build around it this year, see for sure. And once they see for sure, then they could roll forward.
Real quick before we, or go ahead, Jake.
No, go ahead.
Real quick, because if we look back in our short little history here in Nashville, we haven't had that many vocal rah quarterbacks in the building. I mean, you go back to Steve, Mariota wasn't really that type of guy, and Tannehill was to an extent. But what do you think the organization? How do you think they feel about having a guy like that in that mold once again? Because it's been successful for us.
Yeah, I think having. I just watched that Dolphins game again the other night.
Man,
that gets me so fired up, man.
Oh, he came off the field looking like a cartoon character. And the way he chest bumped, we got Tim Kelly first. Then I don't know if you guys saw, but he got Caleb Murphy and almost spun him around. And I was cracking up. Yeah. So that type of fire, guys feed off of that. But then you got your guys like D-Hop. It's like, yo, chill, man. Like, I'm good. So it's going to be cool watching, the mix with everybody. But he definitely is a fiery guy. And I know, going back to what I said about Arden Key and other defensive guys, like the defense loves that shit, man.
Yeah,
they love him. I remember talking to Sean Murphy-Bunting, and he was like, "Man, I ain't surprised after the Falcons game. I ain't surprised. We saw him do this all week. That's my guy. You know what I mean?" So yeah, he already has an impact.
Watching that cut up from his debut against the Falcons with Jeffrey Simmons was awesome. Man, like that's to be Will's point. The Titans, I mean, going back, like sure, like Tannehill had a little bit of swag to him when he would score and he would celebrate a little bit. But, my guy Sal from Jersey, one of the points that he made throughout this several seasons was he made a good point. And the sticking point he had on Tannehill was that you never really saw that fire from Tannehill. He never got pissed off. He never got he just even keel. And I know you want your quarterback even keel, but man, when you got a little bit of juice, when you got a little bit of hype, when your quarterback is bringing the energy, there's something special about that, right? And you want him to be even, but at the same time, you need to be able to take that step. And when he went out and did what he did in Miami and had that moment on the sideline, every single Titans fan had the same thought. It was like, hold on. We got our guy. Like, I'm getting hyped about this. And to see Tim Kelly and Vrabel come out and say what they said, like, I know it's coach speak and they kind of have to say that, like, act like you've been there type thing. We get it. Yeah. But, man, as a fan, that fired me up, bro. And you're right. Like, that's something that we haven't really had in a quarterback in maybe ever. You know what I'm saying? So it's been a long time. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. And I think as we look for leadership, 100% there. I think we all agree with that. The ability to navigate the pocket has to improve. We touched on that. And I think a lot of that can boil down to speeding up the diagnosis of that pre-snap decision making. We saw it far too many times last season where we're snapping the ball right at the last second, allowing for that defense to time that snap, which is going to, I mean, we all know Andre Dillard wasn't the guy and it made it even harder out there, but to put him even on an island there and give the defense even an extra advantage. So it's something that's got to be sped up. And that, I mean, he was a rookie last season. He's going to improve with that. And then we talked about the turnovers. He should have had far more than we talked about. But yes, I think overall, this second round contract it's a blessing, but it's also a curse. Paying him less money, we're allowed to build around him, but we don't have that 5th-year option either. So it almost speeds up this rebuild exponentially. And I think that's why we're not going all in this season, but we're definitely moving in the right direction for maybe next year, the year following. So we're building around him on this rookie contract, as most teams should do if you don't have that premier Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen out there for that quarterback system. But we're going to transfer over to the draft now, as we talked about earlier. But if you guys are checking us out for the first time, do us a couple favors. First off, go to Apple Podcast. You're going to type in Talking with TD. You're going to go subscribe over there. Then you're going to come over to YouTube, and you're going to go to 102.5 The Game. You're going to go subscribe to the channel. And then you're going to type in Glory Day Sports after that. And you're going to come back over here. You're going to subscribe. You're going to hit the like button. You're going to head over to Twitter. You're going to retweet. And then you're going to hop into the live chat over on YouTube to join the conversation. We want to talk to you guys. We want to hear your questions. But going into the draft, we have beat this dead horse on this show and every show in general as far as tackle, wide receiver, and going into all of that. So we want to talk about some more position groups as we close out this draft process. And we're going to hop into the tight ends. We heard him talk about it in the presser last week. There's only 3 on the roster. That's Josh Wiley, Chig, and Thomas Odukoye, who is an international pathway player. So it benefits us to keep him on the practice squad more so than bringing him up to the active roster so we can carry that additional player. TD, who are just some guys maybe in this class that are your guys or you see potential fits for the Titans this season?
Yeah, I think you look at Illinois tight end Tip Raymond. I personally, Jaheim Bell is a guy that I really like. And for him, the explosiveness. I mean, that Florida State offense, when Jordan Travis was right, they had playmakers, man. They were going. And there were a couple times where I saw him catch a pass and outrun the defense, working alongside Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, et cetera. But when you talk about Bell specifically, I like just the way that you can move him all over the place. You can line him up in line. You could, have him as a true H-back as well. Those are the things that I like, the versatility. I'm just curious how this scheme is going to use tight ends. You look at, in the past, Hayden Hurst had a productive year with Cincinnati. I just want to see what Brian Callahan's stamp is going to be on the offense with tight ends. But Jaheim Bell is a guy that, you want playmaking ability out of the position, man. He gives it to you right there.
It's interesting you say that about Hayden Hurst and Cincinnati because they really play musical chairs with tight ends. If you look at it, they try different archetypes, different type of players. So it's really just a crapshoot with what Callahan sees. For me personally, I don't know if they put too much emphasis on the tight ends, but
I don't think so.
I don't think they do that as well. So, yeah, we'll see. And he says we need more tight ends, but I think that's just for competition too. We absolutely, yes.
Right.
We absolutely
from
need
a
guys.
Depth perspective, yeah. No,
special teams, yeah.
That's a good thing about this tight end class too, is that there's a ton of talent at the bottom, right? Like rounds, like you could get a really valuable guy who can come in and contribute and potentially make your roster in rounds like 4 to 6. So I feel like there's one guy, TD, that I really like that is an absolute freak of nature athletically. Not sure that the production was necessarily there playing wise, but Theo Johnson from Penn State, I'm a really, really big fan of that you might be able to get in like the 4th or 5th. And then of course, like Tip Ryman, really big fan of him as well. But yeah, I think there's a ton of value that you can get in a tight end late round. But there's a tight end at the top that's interesting as well. That's getting that name kicked around a little bit. He just had a video, I think, yesterday, Brock Bowers, where he just did like a standing backflip, and bro is like huge. So what are your thoughts on Brock Bowers and potentially the Titans not necessarily selecting him at 7, but if there were a trade down scenario, or who knows, like, what are your thoughts on them selecting him at 7? Does that make sense here for the Titans?
I know he's one of the players that will be considered. And it's one of those things where it's like, I hate to miss out on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of the approach that they're taking. The tight end position is interesting because when you look at, Vernon Davis, I remember he was selected high. I think he was 7th way back when. And it didn't happen initially, but once he got going, man, that dude was, putting up double-digit touchdown seasons. But that position, you look at a lot of the top guys, they weren't drafted in the first round. So that could kind of jade some people's, likeness to take a tight end. But Brock Bowers, man, the yards after the catch, just the ability to create, he's a lot. I was on another show yesterday talking about Malik Neighbors and how he makes the protection better just because it's just catch and throw and you go get it. Bowers is the same. Yeah. And when you have that ability and also the matchup problems that he presents, it's worth it. I don't think this team should do it, but you look at a team like the Jets, at 10, they absolutely should take Brock Bowers. The Titans, there's a lot more that they need, and a lot that they need more than the tight end position. So I wouldn't do it at 7 or even in a trade back scenario, honestly.
It kind of feels like, I know we talk about the Kyle Pitts things, the comp to Kyle Pitts of drafting him so high and not seeing the direct result of drafting a player like a tight end at that position. So the positional value has gotten worse. But if you look at Brock Bowers, it kind of feels a little bit like Marvin Harrison Jr., where he's not really working out. He's not in the limelight of some of the other top talent in the draft. So he's kind of just casually sliding down the board. And then you add the positional value thing and it slides him even further. But if you take those narratives away and just look at the player and the production that he had in college, it's kind of hard to not be like, this is a top 5 player in the draft, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the top talent. Why is he sliding down? And so it'll be interesting to see if one of these teams at the top, like maybe even the Chargers, like who knows, maybe that's their guy. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where he falls.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you talk about, Vernon Davis, he was balling with Harbaugh as the coach and running the offense with Greg Roman there too, who just so happens to be the OC for the Chargers now. They're both living out of those RVs. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah.
They're doing something. Vernon Davis is sort of part of Titans history, too. He helped Laney Walker a lot when he was down in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So, little indirect there. But it's funny you say that about the protection and Malik Neighbors. It's something I tweeted about yesterday. And so it's hard. I think it's hard for a lot of people to see that bottom layer of that and it's something that Callahan said as well, that the receivers have a responsibility to keep the quarterback clean just as much as the offensive linemen do. We don't really have a guy outside of maybe Ridley, and his numbers don't even suggest that he's been really good against press man. But a guy like Neighbors, how much do you think the Titans put into that type of stock that he could help with the protection and stuff like that? Because he's a yak guy. You get him the ball, and he's him.
Yeah. I know they put a lot of effort and work and stock into Neighbors. I mean, met with him at the combine, visit with him, also had him at the pro day. And I know their top ranking guys really, really like Neighbors. So a guy like that, I love what Jordan Reed said about him. He said he plays like he has a jetpack on his back. And that really is how he plays. And, you talk about the press coverage. It's something he's gotten better at, but he just simply didn't see a lot of it because a lot of DBs didn't dare press him. And that's because he has that gas, right? And that 4.3 that he ran, 4.35, like it shows on the field. You see him just simply running by people in his routes and stuff like that.
He teleports out there, man. It's insane. You'll see him in the slot 1 minute, and then he'll be on the numbers in a second. I mean, it's just it's insane. What about you? What do you think about that ideology with the Titans and how it fits with us? What do you prefer if you were in Rand Carthen's shoes?
I mean, you say like as far as like the offensive lineman versus the receiver?
in our situation at 7, like if Alt's available, if Neighbors available, who would you go in that situation with that in mind?
Ooh, that's tough, man. I would probably go Alt. I think Alt is the most pro-ready prospect in this draft, and that's the direction I would go. Look, Neighbors he's exciting, and he's an instant playmaker, but I think you could also get an exciting playmaker at 38, whether it's Xavier Legette or who have you. So I would go the opposite direction. I'll go.
You say Legette, or go ahead, Jake.
I was going to say that's just what we kind of think the consensus is going to be around the league is, and we see that with the betting odds now. The Titans are probably leaning more towards Alt just because of the need and how it just matches up there. I personally like Olu Fashanu just a little bit more than Alt. Just I think he's a slightly better pass blocker. Obviously, Joe Alt is the better in run blocking. I mean, you got to give him kudos there. He's a people mover, but I like the way Olu is able to dance his feet. He's the best mirror in this draft class, in my opinion. The best tackle I've ever covered.
That Michigan game was my favorite one to watch.
100%. And then we've talked about it in the show. I went back and watched the Ohio State tape because that's the one that always comes up. Everybody's hating on Olu, and Joe
he didn't struggle that much in that game. I mean, he lost a couple reps, but
he did lose reps. He did give up
initially, he had some issues.
Yeah, and then down like at the very end of the game, he gave up a couple just because Ohio State was able to pin the ears back. They're coming. Penn State's back. They got to throw the ball. They know it's coming. So he had some failed reps there towards the end. Joe Alt, he started against Ohio State very slow as well, and down the stretch he was amazing. But I don't seeing that tape that he's put out the last 2 years as far as Olu goes. I am super happy with that. He is my number one tackle, number 3 on my big board. But going back to Malik Neighbors, he's my number 1 over Marvin Harrison Jr. I would love for the Titans to select him at 7. But kind of switching back to the tight ends, we talked about Jaheim Bell. We've talked about Theo Johnson. We talked about a lot of Brock Bowers, of course. If I'm out on Brock Bowers at 7. Even in a trade back, I'm probably still going a different direction just because of the luxury pick that is, and we don't have that luxury, in my opinion. But if I'm looking down the board at some of these guys that get me hot and bothered, I'm looking at it like a Tanner McLaughlin out of Arizona. Former wide receiver transferred to tight end. I mean, giving Delaney Walker vibes, of course. I loved what I saw as far as a route runner. Former receiver, of course, he's going to put that on tape. And he's not a bad blocker as well. So he's still learning that craft. But that's a guy you might be able to get in the 6th, 7th round, maybe potentially undrafted free agent. But that's a guy that you can bring in as a camp body that I think can push a Chig or a Josh Wiley on this roster. So that'd be a guy that I'd be super happy with. But let's talk edge now. So obviously we got Arden Key. We've got Harold Landry. We've got some good pieces. The coaching staff has talked about Arden Key as this positional pass rusher, positional starter. They got to bring in a couple more guys. We got some guys on the back end of this roster that can kind of help with that, but they need a premier guy. Who are some guys that you might be a little higher on than most that they can fill this position? And I guess you could address maybe Dallas Turner at 7, but we'll see how that goes. But how about it, TD?
Yeah, I think, you talk about guys a little higher. Adisa Bakari is a guy I really like. I love Adisa Isaac. I always do that. I have a friend, Adisa Bakari, who's Stephon Diggs' agent, and I always do that. So Adisa Isaac is who I'm talking about. Pardon me.
The other Penn State.
Out of Penn State. And I tell you, on the opposite side, obviously you got Chop Robinson, but so many times watching that Penn State film, you see Isaac and Chop just wrecking shop. I love how he gets off the ball. You go back and you look at the Senior Bowl one-on-ones, especially he and Fuaga, Thais Fuaga, they were going at it. And I remember talking to him about going from rep to rep and changing, what you learn from and changing it and implementing a different weapon. And that's the thing. He has his toolbox, whether it's the long arm stab, the spin move, just the speed, the power, the shoulder dip. He brings all of that. And I watched him go from the shoulder dip to the spin move in reps. And then in practice, just like in a team portion of practice, use a whole different move against Fuaga also. So those are the type of things I like. He's a long, like, rusher. He's a guy that, as I mentioned, that speed to power really shows. So he's somebody that I really like, Fuaga. I tell you someone else that's very intriguing, and I think, later down the line, Xavier Thomas out of Clemson. Coming out, like, he was a highly decorated prospect, a 5-star. He got to Clemson, had some injury issues, but the ability is there. So I think, he's someone you can kind of catch lightning in the bottle late because of all the ability that he has.
There seems to be a lot more depth at this position than maybe we were led to believe early on in the process. Looking at looking on down this list, like, there are guys that, after taking a second look at them, pretty impressive. Like, Muhammad Kamara is another guy who's really interesting, who has some really awesome tape. I watched. There was a rep. I think TD. You might have been the one to share it, but there was a rep where he just blasted. I don't know who the lead blocker was. It might have been a running back, but absolutely cooked this guy in the backfield. So I think that there's more talent at this position than I think most people are led to believe. So, which is exciting for a Titans team that desperately needs to add some depth there. So that was one of my questions as we were going to talk about the edge, is that it seems to be the popular pick for the Titans in mock drafts lately has been for them to go edge at 38. Obviously, there's a couple of guys who are really enticing towards the top and middle of this list. But if there's a certain player at pick 38, where would you have the Titans going? Would it be edge?
Yeah, I mean, look, you got Chris Braswell. If Darius Robinson happens to be there, I don't really look at him as much as an edge, as just like a versatile D lineman. But those are some names. I tell you, Devondre Sweat, if he's there, which is very likely, there's a possibility. I mean, think about putting that next to Jeffrey Simmons.
Yeah,
pretty impressive. And I know, there's issues, right? There's definitely issues. You know what I mean? And me, like, I'm the last person to look at what he came up with and be like, oh yeah, he character. I did the same thing, actually worked. So I mean, look, it is what it is. But I think really what you have to determine is, like, okay, is this a good person that made a bad decision? And one of the best things that Mike Vrabel said, I remember asking him about this, during that Jeffrey Simmons draft, at the combine, about drafting guys with character. And he was like, is this a good person that makes a bad decision? Or is this a person who has a repeated history of making bad decisions, which makes them a bad person? So I think that's really what it comes down to. So, yeah, I mean, Devondre Sweat is someone I can see. I mean, look at the receivers, too, whether it's Troy Franklin, Leggett. I mean, there's Keon Coleman. I don't think Keon Coleman makes it past 28. But, if he's there at 38, that's somebody else, too.
What about Ladd? Do you like Ladd? Ladd and Pearsall?
Yeah, I like Ladd. I like Ricky Pearsall more because I feel that you get at it. And, man, Pearsall just got that juice, man.
He's got it.
He got that. Yeah, he got that sauce, man.
He's coming to the cookout too, ain't he?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's coming right to the cookout, and he's what I bring to the cookout and be like, look, man, don't holler at nobody's girl when you here, man, because I can see him, like, he pulling somebody's shit.
Yeah.
He got that John B in him.
Yeah, he does.
You saw him running those routes with Tyreek and Jalen, and man, that boy can get in between the cones. He's really impressive. That's the only thing about that wide receiver class too that's exciting is we've been cracking jokes like, oh, this is just diet Kyle Phillips or whatever, but these guys had some insane production at the collegiate level too, in Ladd and Ricky. So either way, I don't think the Titans are going to shy away from adding talent like that just because you might have a similar profile player who could potentially come online. Like, as far as Brian Callahan and Nick Foles are concerned, it's like, bro, we need production. So, add talent. You're not going to be void in that case just because you add a guy who might have a similar profile to Kyle Phillips. You don't avoid drafting him. So I wouldn't be surprised if one of those guys landed on the roster too.
Yeah, and they bring more of a vertical aspect too. Both of those guys, they time faster and they play faster vertically.
Mm-hmm. I think they both, and I think it goes overlooked, they both have the ability to play on the outside. They're probably more preferred in the slot, but they have the athletic traits and the size to play on the outside, unlike Kyle Phillips. Maybe there's some injury history there with the both of them as well. But Pretty Ricky, I mean, we look at that Florida offense, and he kind of went overlooked early in this draft process and has kind of picked up speed just because that Florida offense was just chuck it and fuck it. It has been the last 2 seasons with AR and then going into this season. But it didn't do him any services. So I like Pretty Ricky. I like him. Like, agree with you. I like him over Ladd. Ladd's a great prospect as well. If he's there at 38, wouldn't hate it. Going back to Javondre Sweat, B. Will said it last week. He showed up to Tennessee in a orange jumpsuit, and that just shows commitment to me. And
I respect the hell out of it.
Yeah, I respect.
Like the next, man, that much respect for that.
Yeah. No, so I like Javondre. Maybe 38's a little bit rich for me, but I mean, we go into the Byron Murphy. I mean, his playing mate. Those we need interior defensive linemen to help as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I might be a little bit higher on some of the guys we already have in-house. I mean, Keandre Coburn. We're talking about Texas. Keandre Coburn just started over both of those guys 2 years ago. It was a rookie last season, a 6th-round draft pick. I liked what we saw down the stretch. And then you go into guys like maybe slightly undersized, TK McClendon. I mean, another rookie that played well last season. Well, I think he's only like 270, but we're looking for this Danico Autry replacement, this tweener. I think that TK's got something.
That's Darius Robinson. That's Darius
Robinson is that dude. Yeah. He is that
Two
dude.
other guys, though. Two other guys at the edge that I like, too, is, Mo Kamara, like you said, Jonathan.
Yep.
Watch him on that Colorado tape. Different, against Colorado. I mean, that was a hell of a game to watch, Colorado State. He got ejected in the game, but, I mean, he was a difference maker in that game.
He was wrecking shop.
He was wrecking shop in that game. And another guy that sort of goes under the radar that we could get a little later is Nelson Caesar from Houston. I like him a lot. So
love it.
That could be another guy that we could go after. Edge is a need for us, for sure. I wouldn't be mad at 38, but I think there's so many guys that we can get in the mid-rounds too.
100%. And, I mean, we talked about it with a couple of these guys now. Some just going deeper down this list. I mean, you got guys like Austin Booker, who's still developing out of Kansas. He's still developing those pass rush moves. And maybe a guy that just – we talk about these top 5, 6 at edge. Jonah Ellis out of Utah, I absolutely love.
Yeah.
As far as just like having a pass rush plan, I think it's Latu and then Jonah Ellis. He might not be as gifted as an athlete as some of these guys, but don't look past Jonah. And at 38, maybe it's rich, but I wouldn't hate it. I love Jonah Ellis's tape.
I like him on a trade down, maybe.
Exactly.
Maybe trade down from 38, land him at like 40, late 40s, early 50s.
And Turron, let's hop into it. I mean, we've had the talks of the trade down at 7, the trade downs at 38. What are your thoughts? Are we sticking and picking, or are you personally looking more towards a trade back and getting that 3rd-round pick that we're missing desperately this season?
I think that's the ideal thing, is to be able to move back, acquire another top 100 pick. They only have 2, but you don't want to move back too far to where you don't have a chance at an Olu or a J.C. Latham, those types. Who I know, Latham is a guy that a lot of teams, they have right there with all as far as on their tackle board. So to be able to move back and still get him and get another pick, I think that's the ideal thing. I know that that's what they want to do, looking at, that's one of the scenarios that they would like to be in, but it takes 2 to tango, and we just have to see how this quarterback situation goes as far as J.J. McCarthy, how things fall in front of him.
TD, I want to get your opinion on this. I recorded, me and a friend of mine, Dalton, we do a dual mock draft every year. And so one of us takes odds, one of us takes evens, and then we do a dual mock. And if we trade with the opposite person's team, then we have to negotiate. It's like a fun thing. We recorded that video, and then the file corrupted, so hate my life. But in the video, we said something really interesting. And as we were talking through negotiating trades, we kind of stumbled across a strategy or a thought that makes a ton of sense. And I was picking odds. And so I landed on the Chargers, and I was looking at a trade down. And as we talked through it, I started to realize that some of these teams that are looking to trade down might be in a little bit of a predicament, because the top 15 to 20 talent that's available in this draft is so good that what I found was that in looking for value in a trade, teams like the Chargers found it hard to trade down to 11 or so, unless, of course, J.J. McCarthy is your guy, then you go get him, I suppose, right? But J.J. McCarthy aside, when you're looking at trading up, the value didn't match the trade down for the trading down team, meaning the value that they got back in compensation wasn't quite worth missing out on the talent that they were missing out on. And the compensation didn't match that because teams that are trading up maybe don't, like, they're not hating staying, like the Jets, they probably don't hate staying at 10. They're going to land somebody great. You know, the Raiders, the Broncos, minus the fact that they're maybe not looking for their quarterback in the first round, those teams are probably totally fine with staying at 13 and 12 because they know they're going to land a very talented player. So you're not going to overspend unless you just go get your guy. So, like, kind of what's your thoughts on, like, the trade down potential and trade up for some of these teams?
Yeah, I mean, you said it, outside of quarterback is very limited, but you get a team like the Bears, right? You get a team, let's say the Cardinals, you know, they trade out of 4, and let's say Neighbors is still there at 7. I could see them trading up, or Dunze is still there at 7. I can see them trading up in that type of situation. So it's going to be very specific to players. I don't see, outside of those 2 receivers, I don't see anybody that someone would trade up to get, you know, obviously not including the quarterback.
Real quick, TD, we talk about the trades and it takes 2 to tango, and this might be a little off topic, but how close were the Titans to trading up last year for that other guy in our division? I just want to know
the answer to this.
Yeah, I unearthed that he was the top guy on the board, their top quarterback for sure, in Indy. Yeah, I remember telling Jared Stillman that, and he was like, "Look, man, it is what it is. That dude is him," and they believe that, you know. So I know there was a lot of talk about doing it. I'll put it that way. It
seems like we're not as loose at the lips this year since we've had a change too. So I think that helps. Something I've noticed.
There's a certain pipeline that was kind of.
Yeah, it went dry.
Just disconnected, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, it's dry now.
TD, what's your sense on the media side? Like, are things more enjoyable for you guys when a coaching staff and front office is more forthcoming with information in general? Because it seemed like as fans, we were all kind of getting tired of the got to coach better, got to play better situation. But it wasn't just that answer. It was also kind of just this stoic, always response that we got from Vrabel, where he was like, "Here, I don't have an answer for you. Stop asking me," type of vibe. Now we have like this very open and transparent responses that we're getting. It just seems like a breath of fresh air. Is it the same thing for you guys on the media side?
It's funny you say that because after I love Denard Wilson's energy.
Oh man,
you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
This is a big pro Denard Wilson pod, TD.
Yeah, the energy and just the way he makes you feel at walking out of the press conference, you're just like, yo. But the last time when they all spoke, I remember saying, wow, like this dude told us, like Nick Holtz told us, you know, how they huddled. It's so different. You know what I mean? So yeah, you definitely feel it because everybody in the room was like, wow, like they actually said something, like they shared a lot of information with us. And there's no slight on Mike Vrabel. He had his way of doing things, and there were times where he would talk a little more than others. But it's just like that last year was just one of those years where you could just tell, like, this act is getting tired, you know, to everybody. So yeah, it's definitely refreshing. From what I've been told, Brian Callahan is really, really good with the media. What I've seen so far, he's been, you know, awesome. I think Rand too. You know, you gotta look at Rand and just, you know, how he is with us. Not always able to answer every question. It's not because he doesn't know. It's just there are times, like you look at the presser that he had after Vrabel got fired, like, and they threw that man. He is like, you know, a fish out of water. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I think for the most part, yeah, you're right. It's definitely refreshing. I want to see how long it continues, right? You know, because right now, hey, look, it's the honeymoon phase, right? So everything is
see what happens when you start losing.
Yeah, what happens if you go 0-4? You know, how are you going to be then? But that's remains to be seen.
I think it's cool to see the growth of the coordinators as well. if you look at Holtz's first press conference, it was, I wouldn't say clammy, but it wasn't as he followed up behind Denard Wilson too, and that ain't easy. But even the last press conference Holtz did, you can see the growth in a couple weeks, the confidence he has as a person, because these guys are humans, man. But you can see that he's grown exponentially already in the role.
Yeah, you could definitely see that, and
he was explaining the install.
I like that part of it. You notice they had him go before Wilson this time.
They had to.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you're setting them up for failure. That's like having the closer come out before the opener. So, but we're gonna shift focus, guys. We're gonna hop in. We're gonna talk best concerts next to end the show, as we always do. We'll end with the draft. We're going snake draft style. We'll go TD first, and we're gonna go Jonathan, B. Will, then myself. And then I'll have back-to-back, and we'll circle back through. We're doing 3 picks today, opposed to our normal 4 since we got the 4 seats today. But TD, we're building a perfect concert. Who is the 101 for you?
Hey, look, man, there's a lot of concerts I've been to, but I think, Wu-Tang, I got to go with Wu-Tang just because of the collection. You get so many. You get Meth, the Jizza, Raekwon, Ghostface, you know what I mean? You got Inspector Deck. You get all those guys. Yeah, let me go. I go Wu-Tang because it's just all encompassing.
No. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that at the 101 at all.
That's a steal there because you get more than one. I like that.
That's what I picked.
I like that.
I didn't even think about that.
That is a value pick. All right, look, this one, I'm really excited I got the 102 because I was afraid that I might not have gotten this. This is a guy who I saw I was literally front row in 2011, I think. It was coming off of what was considered his worst album at the time, but it was electric. Man, this guy was insane. And Kendrick Lamar opened for him. It was one of the best nights of my life. And I'm going with Kanye West. Kanye, say what you want about Kanye. He's my favorite musical artist of all time, has been since, graduation. But when you talk about a show, this guy, his show, you got everything, his entire discography at the time. But what was really fun is that he broke his show down into acts like it was a play. So there was this massive LED on the ceiling, and it was like Act 1, and it basically talked about broke down his life in Act 1, and then he broke his discography down into like how he was basically talking about his life up until that point. So it was jumping around from genre to genre, album to album, and it was electric. So I got to go Kanye.
Love it.
For sure.
All right, B. Will. You got the 103.
Man, so I'm going to take a page out of TD's route, and I'm going to just focus on the South. We're in the South, so I think, we could probably have this concert in Atlanta. We could have it in Houston. But I'm going to probably take 3 6 Mafia for my first one. So you get a lot of the guys there. You get guys like Juicy J. You get, I mean, there's so many people you can get. And you've had that concert in Memphis. It's jumping. You could have it in Houston, everywhere. And they still have a lot of people they could bring on if they really want to because everybody's flipping their stuff now, especially out of Memphis. So that's who I'm going to go with.
Man, I'm going a different route. I guess I got back-to-back picks here. So I'm a country boy. I live in Oklahoma. That's all I listen to, basically. But as far as performers go, there's one guy, and he's a local guy down here, and that's Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks is my 101. Yep. I love Garth, and I've seen his daughters play soccer down here. He's a cool dude. He's very approachable, but he puts on a show. Man, he's an athlete. He gets out there and he goes, and him and Trisha, they put on a show. But after that, and kind of why we talked about it before the show, is like, do they have to be alive still? Because I saw a guy that is, in regards to country music and everything, this is who everybody's talking about. This is what their song's about, and that's the Hag, Merle Haggard. I got to see back in Norman for a tornado relief concert, and he was one of the openers. And the Hag, he still got it. He still had it. I mean, the dude is it. So I'm going Garth Brooks, Merle Haggard, and then B. Will. You're back up on the board.
Man, I'm gonna stay in the South. I'll probably have to go Outkast to sort of keep the South going.
God,
TD got me on the group thing, man, and I'm going at it. But you got a guy like Andre 3000 that can play every single instrument known to man. You got a guy, and it's just he alone And he can get the other fella too. I'm freaking blanking on his name right now, which is crazy to think about. But
Big boy.
Big boy, yeah, Big boy. But Andre 3000, man. I mean, with them in my third pick, they'll be able to play an amazing song that'll pop in y'all's head as soon as I announce the third pick, and that's really where I'm going with that. Especially if it's in the South, man. The concert will be jumping. Can't believe I forgot about Big Boy's name. I'm ashamed.
that was Outkast was on my board. I'm gonna also mix up the genre with this one, and I'm also gonna do the all-time thing. And obviously, I'm too young to have gotten to experience this, but just from all the footage you see, I mean, this looked like an incredible, incredible show. And obviously, MJ is a classic. I'm gonna leave off MJ for now. I'm sure he's gonna get taken before I get a chance to pick him, but I'm gonna roll with Queen. I think Queen would have been an absolutely incredible live show. I'm such a huge fan of so many of their
Live
songs.
Aid.
Yeah,
Live Aid. Oh man,
yeah,
he probably would have been my next
man.
So many people there, and just having everyone in sync for multiple songs. I mean, that must have been a different type of electric. So I'm gonna roll Queen.
Yeah, that's a good one. Freddie Mercury. I remember they had at JFK Stadium in Philly. They played. I forget who was there in Philly that played as part of Live Aid, but yeah, man, that's a good pick. So we're doing people that we could do somebody that we haven't seen
for sure
for ourselves.
Just
okay.
Your concert, yeah.
It changes a little bit, but look, I like to have something for everybody. So yeah, I gotta bring in. How could you not have the artist Prince? I mean,
for sure, man.
I think when you look at, and I'm so mad. I never saw him, and he's one of my favorite performers.
Is he a
my
Philly
favorite artist?
Prince?
No, Minnesota.
Okay.
But just Purple Rain, Diamonds and Pearls, Insatiable. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 9th and 10th grade TD was having fun in those songs. I would say Prince. Just the showmanship. You talk about Andre 2000, 3000 rather, being able to play so many instruments. That Prince could do it all, and he could sing, and he just had that stage presence. Just watching his concert. So yeah, we're going Wu-Tang and we're going Prince.
We had a good Super Bowl performance,
Charlie Murphy,
but Prince had the best one ever, I think.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
I think I agree.
Well, you got back-to-back, Turron. You got to finish it out.
Oh, so I get to pick again. So this is my final pick then, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you know what? I'm going to match it up. And I actually just finally saw him in concert this past November. I have been waiting and waiting. I'm going Nas, man. And the thing I like about Nas is he could go ahead and be a part of Wu-Tang. He and Raekwon and Ghostface were really close, and they had that song. They had a couple songs together, but then also just the way he could bring out his fellow QB natives and Mobb Deep, Prodigy, rest in peace, and Havoc. That would be, that would be. As you see, I'm a Northeast, Philly, New York influence music wise. So yeah, that's it right there.
Man, that's a good one. And there's a guy that I want to pick so badly. There's two guys that I want to pick so badly, and they are both legends in hip hop. But you know what? I'm leaning towards. I'm gonna roll with a different guy because again, this is someone that unfortunately was too young to experience in person. But my God, man, oh my God, I just thought of somebody else too. Oh my God, this is terrible. I'll save them for after. I'm just gonna roll with this guy. I'm gonna go with Tupac.
Yeah,
man, a Tupac show. My God, bro. That the way that he could get a crowd rolling was electric as well, and for a different reason with a different style and genre of music. And I think that would have been absolutely electric. There's two other guys I'm going to put on here. Let's see if they get taken. But two other very capable people in this back end.
Good deal. All right. Rounding out the South, man, I'll have to go with UGK, Pimp C, Bun B. And like I said, that song, they'll be able to play International Players Anthem with Outkast. Yep. That's going to rock out the whole concert. Yep. Rest in peace to Pimp C, obviously. And, I just Southern themed in the South. People that ain't from the South ain't going to really be able to appreciate that for what it is, but the people from the South will, man.
No doubt.
Man, I guess I'm finishing it out. I got my last pick. There's so many people left up on the board, and I have about 6 left on my list.
I know.
But man, I'm going Johnny Cash.
Ooh,
I love
Hey,
Johnny
beat that.
Cash, and I mean, as far as performance goes, he's obviously didn't get to see him, but it still stands the test of time, and that wraps it up. TD, you got Wu-Tang, Prince, Lil Nas X. Jonathan, you got Ye,
We got
Queen,
Nas.
Tupac.
Definitely not
Yeah.
Lil Nas X.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
I'm
B Will's
That
got
is
3 6
funny.
Mafia.
Man, I shouldn't have corrected you. If you would have put that on the graphic, that would have been so hilarious.
I was 100% did. I 100% would have. Outcast, and I got Garth Brooks, Myrtle Haggard, Johnny Cash. I'm just really surprised nobody took Taylor Swift.
Nah, bro.
Not the arena.
I'm good.
Yep.
I was going to trade back for Beyonce and Jay-Z, though. But Jonathan took Kanye, so I'm sort of,
Yep.
Yeah.
I was going to throw them
Yep.
together.
Okay, so
I
Phil
tell you,
Collins, too.
B.I.G., man, Biggie, I
Him
wanted
too.
to put him in, but I got bad memories from concerts with Biggie. I remember I went to see him, and this was at a place outside of Philly, and I went, and he came out, and he did Who Shot You, and then people in the crowd went crazy, and
Yeah.
he left, and then like everybody was fighting and stuff, and the state troopers came in, and we ran up out of there, man. So
Yeah, man.
I couldn't pick B.I. because of that, man.
That's
Yeah,
another guy that could galvanize a crowd.
that
Yeah,
West Coast,
absolutely.
East Coast
Yeah, that's my goat.
feud for so many years was so special. The other guys I was considering, obviously, I have Eminem, who would be like his discography is untouchable. He's such an awesome show that I think that would be. I haven't gotten to see him in live. The other guy, though, that I was strongly considering over Tupac is DMX, bro.
Yeah.
DMX. You want to talk about getting the crowd rowdy? My goodness, bro. The energy at a DMX show must have been out of this world. He kind of had a similar, I don't know what show that was, but in the early 90s, he had like a similar like Queen live show where, he got everybody.
When he did Get At Me, Dog, and that
I think
whole
it was. He had the red overalls. He came out and said, "Dun, dun, dun, dun," and the whole. So yeah, that one would have been special too.
Yeah, DMX, that's that workout music, man.
Yep.
Yeah. Another one that I would have mentioned is Sade. I mean, because she can play all those. Her band's really good. Her, Keith Sweat. If I would have went that route, I mean, it would have been a whole different rabbit hole,
Yeah, that's a different.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. B-Will's got a party.
Oh, yeah, man.
That's what we'll wrap it up today, guys. Thanks for everybody tuning in. We got a 300-400 in the chat. We appreciate you guys. TD, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, for sure, man. Find me on what you call it, X now, right? At T Davenport _NFL. You can check Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, Talking with TD, and of course ESPN.com. There's a Titans page. All of my Titans work goes on there. So definitely, man. I appreciate you guys, man. This is a dope show.
Thank you.
We appreciate
Absolutely.
you. We appreciate you. Your URL is still Twitter, so I'm gonna still call it Twitter till then. But as always, you can follow B-Will at BWillTFTV. You can follow Jonathan at Esports Valen. You can follow me at Glory Days Sports over on Twitter /X as well. Go like, comment, and subscribe. Do all the socials, and we will check you guys out next week for the draft. And we got some big plans coming up. We're still working on those, but we're super excited. We'll check y'all later. Peace.